Greetings and welcome back to Quack Poker. As you can tell, we are here back with another sit and go tournament this week. So let's just see how it goes. To give a little update, so if you watched last week's video, well, if you haven't watched last week's video, I'm going to give a little spoilers here. So I'll give you a second. We'll just rest for a second, and those of you who don't want to be spoiled can skip ahead like a minute in the video here. Okay, so now we're into spoiler territory. Um, so yeah, last week I think that hand at the end, I thought more about it, and I think it was kind of a weird spot for me because I felt like interesting flop for us, but I don't think we're gonna do anything here. It was an interesting hand for me because I felt like we were in this spot where King Queen is like, it's in a very good spot of our range. I think we're gonna go ahead and bet here. We could win, we could lose, who knows? Uh, King Queen was in a it's pretty high in our range, especially if we're just coming up with random hands there. So it's a hand you want to play, but at the same time, we'd be playing it out of position and probably just couldn't play it in a very profitable way. I think betting here again is okay because if our opponent has missed the spade draw, he's just going to fold. Probably could have made it a little bit smaller here, though. He calls. Oh, well. Or if he made the spade draw, yeah, he's probably going to call. Okay. I was hoping he just had one spade and was peeling on the river there. I think we could have made our river bet a little smaller. Anyway, going back to last week's hand, I think we were in a really weird spot there just because we had a really good hand, but it really didn't seem like it was that profitable to call. Just because we were out of position, the other guy could shove. We could, there were just a lot of weird dynamics going on. So I didn't want to just call, and that felt really weird with such a strong hand as King Queen. And then I thought also, we're kind of bubbling, and it seemed like that guy was opening up more. Although, kind of now looking back at the hand history, I'm not so sure that was the case. At least I don't think we had enough evidence to really be sure that was the case. But it seemed like he was opening up a bit more, so I felt like a lot of his hands would fold, and a decent number of his hands, too, we would just end up in a flip with if he did happen to call. But I think a lot of times we're going to get him to fold. Occasionally he's behind us, but I don't think he's going to call when he's behind us. So I think like there was just a lot of time where we could take down the pot right there, without playing so nitty that we're giving up our good hands. But, and I think instantaneously that was like a very profitable, or that was a not a very profitable play, but a profitable play. If you mathed it out, most of the time I'm going to win there. Most of the time the math's going to work out okay. The problem is though his range was fairly narrow. He was kind of still. He was a tight player to begin with, so already, we've got a little bit to be worried that he could just have it. And that's kind of the problem is a significant percentage of the time he does just have it there, and our tournament just ends right there in that spot. And so even though mathematically, like we're probably making a tiny bit of money, we were right on the bubble there, and we didn't necessarily, we were abusing the dynamic so well. We were really just, we were in such a good spot there that we didn't need to take any risks, And so even sometimes when a certain play is profitable, because your dynamic is so good, because you have such an edge at a certain point, you just shouldn't take risks, or you should let some of the more marginal risks go. And I think that was one of the more marginal risks. It really depends on like what you assign the guy's total hand range to, is just to how bad it was. But I think, like I said, I think he's folding a significant percentage of the time there, far more than 50% of the time there, probably enough to make it work. And we've got some equity when he calls us, not with the exact hand he had, obviously, but in any case. So I think it was that, it's one of those plays that makes more sense in a cash game, but given the dynamic there, we didn't need to blow our stack. We didn't need to risk that there. And the payoff wasn't worth it, which means probably the play there was to fold, I think. We could call, but most of the time we're just going to be folding on the flop anyway, or the other guy to act could do something. It may have just been better to fold there right out and just be done with it. So, I don't know. That is how it is, and it's one of those things that we try to learn from as we move forward, and all that good stuff. So anyway, we're here today. We've taken a little blow from that first hand there. I think our play was totally fine, but just did not work out for us. Because I think a lot of the time when someone's calling there, they're going to be peeling with like a high card of spades or something like that. Guy just happened to have it. Happened to have it. Nothing we could do about it. You know. And we also had outs to the straight there and other things too. It's a good hand. I don't think we should let this guy limp in. We're going to go ahead and raise it up. Let's see, do we know anything about any of the players here? The guy to our left seems like a fairly tight player with ranges that indicate he might be a decent player, but certainly we want our tight players to our left so we can start attacking him a bit more, especially when he's in the blinds, especially early on, because he's probably just going to give it up. He's probably just not looking to take very many risks early on, is what I would guess from those stats. Again, if you haven't looked at these stats before, I think it's been a little while since I've gone over them. This first stat is what we call VPIP. That's just the percentage of pots where he's putting money in pre-flop. And so if that percentage is really big, it means he's probably playing a very wide range of hands. He's playing a lot of hands that aren't, that are worse, that aren't that great. Of course, this is a pretty good flop for us. We'll probably usually just take it down on the flop here. Although we may have lost a little credibility with that first hand. But anyway, so this first thing is VPIP, and it just kind of gives you an idea of how many hands your opponent is playing. And then an idea then of like, if you imagine all of the hands he could have in a certain spot, it's going to be much wider. He's going to have much weaker hands in his range. Or, if this was like 50%, it would mean he's going to have a lot of weak hands in his range. He's going to be playing a lot of weird stuff. Versus 18% at 9-handed tables is kind of like a normal... it's kind of a good stat for a player who's playing very tight at a 9-handed table. And you can see this next stat here is a pre-flop raise percentage. So it's just how often are they raising pre-flop. And so it just gives you some idea of like how aggressive they are pre-flop. And you'll see we'll make adjustments to that as we go on. Some players almost never raise pre-flop. They always limp, or they'll have like a pre-flop raise of like 2% or 4%. And those players, when they raise, they've got a super premium hand. But other players like this guy will kind of try to balance it. I mean, he's not playing that many hands. He's playing pretty tight, but he's raising a good percentage of the hands that he's getting into before flop. So he's kind of just waiting for the good hands and raising, which is, of course, what we're kind of trying to do too. But we're going to also try to adjust what other players are doing to see if we can find ways to be profitable as well. So now the rest of the players, we have some stats on them right now, but none of it is really statistically significant. We don't have enough hands on them to really know if, did this guy just happen to get 4 of his 8 hands that he's played so far just happen to be good, and so he's played those? Or is this really, he's a guy who just limps a ton of hands? We don't really know. This guy we've played with before, so this red number here indicates how many hands we've played with him. And so since we've played with him a bit before, we have some more information on him. Typically once you get about 50 hands in someone, you have a decent idea of how they're playing. 100 hands, you can feel pretty confident. And 200 hands, you can start drilling down into some of the more complicated stats. And, of course, we got pages and pages of stats. If they'll ever come up here... I don't know. The software is kind of buggy sometimes. Anyway, here's the, we can get pages and pages of stats. But many of these stats, are more complicated. What did they do on the flop? What did they do on the turn? What did they do on the river? And for someone like this guy here, where we only have 15 hands on him, he may not have he just might not even have hands where he's seen rivers that often. If you've only played 15 hands, or, you could be biased towards 1 or 2 hands that made it to the river. So you can't really trust those too much. So I like using the stats. You shouldn't, they say you shouldn't, you want to avoid using them as a crutch. You don't want to just like have your HUD up and then feel like, I can watch TV while I'm playing because I've got this HUD and it's kind of keeping track of everything. Cause it's really not, there's a lot of information that's not here. You want to look at not only what percentage of the hands this guy is opening, but also, what are the types of hands? Is he playing suited connectors at all? Does he every once in a while go crazy and play something weird? He's doing these raises. Does his pre-flop raise size mean anything? Sometimes is he raising 3x versus other times 2x? Can we figure out how good his hand is based on how big he raises pre-flop. These are the kind of things that you kind of just want to pay attention to as much as possible. But I like the HUD because at a 9-player table, it can be really hard to pay attention to every single player, especially players that are on the opposite side of the table here. We're going to more often than not be involved with players on our side of the table, just because that's how it tends to go with pre-flop betting and raising. And so we might not remember too many hands with these guys. We're going to pay attention to the hands we're out of, but we might not focus as much on these guys. And so every once in a while, you just want to go, okay, this guy raised under the gun. Is he just doing that every single time or not, or whatever? Here, we just want to see a cheap flop. Obviously, with small pocket pairs, we're just trying to set mine here. So we're just trying to see if we hit that 3. And we did not, so we will probably not do much in this hand here. There's too many players that really try to bluff at it, take it down. And the flop's kind of wet too, so, with the heart draw, straight draw, and king out there. So we will just fold. Alright, and this seems like as good a moment anyway as any to talk about our beer of the day, the Warsteiner Dunkel, or Warsteiner. I don't know. I'm very bad with my German, and in spite of having a very strong German heritage and all that, I am very bad at pronouncing German words. Anyway, as it were, so this is their Dunkel, because, we're coming up on Oktoberfest time here, and so it's time to drink some good German beers. Typically, during Oktoberfest, you're going to drink beers that are like Oktoberfest beers, which are basically a special type of German lager. And then you've got Dunkels, are a very tasty kind of maltier version of that. And they're very good. I mean, I wouldn't say they're a version of Oktoberfest beers per se, but you see them a lot of the times around Oktoberfest. So my favorite Oktoberfest, we'll be drinking out of the Hofbrau mug, which certainly anybody who's heard anything about German beers has heard about Hofbrau. They're one of the biggest ones. You can get them all over the place in the States. And they actually and they're actually fairly popular in Germany from my understanding. And, I mean, they actually make a very good Oktoberfest and a very good Dunkel. So I do highly recommend those. There's a few places that have actual Hofbrau houses in the States. So I know there's one in Vegas, and there's probably a few other ones in sort of big touristy cities, but I don't really know where. But I've been to the one in Vegas, and it was fun. The food wasn't bad. The beer was, if you like Hofbrau beer, it's good. You get Hofbrau beer on tap. It's good stuff. So that was a lot of fun. So I would recommend checking that out if you're in Vegas and into the German beers. And they're kind of cool places, too, because they're set up kind of like the big German beer halls. And I sadly have not been to Germany yet, so I haven't had that real authentic experience yet. So all I got was sort of the commercially Hofbrau experience, as it were. But I mean, apparently they are a real thing in Germany. And like I said, if you want to try like what a good Oktoberfest is, get the Hofbrau Oktoberfest beer. It's just a great beer. I mean, it's meant to be drank. You can drink a lot of it in very large quantities. It's very easy to drink, but it's still, some of the what I would consider bad Oktoberfest beers are the ones that are just so easy to drink and completely lack character. But I feel like the Hofbrau one, it's got a little bit of its own character to it. That's a little hard for me to characterize without having one in front of me. But there is just a little bit of different character to theirs that I like a lot better than, say, like, I'm not crazy about like the Real Ale Oktoberfest or St. Arnold's Oktoberfest or things like that. But to each his own, maybe you like those ones, whatever. But anyway, going back to this, so definitely, if you want to get your Oktoberfest fix, I mean, I really shouldn't have to be telling you this because it's Hofbrau. I'm sure you've seen it everywhere. I'm sure you've seen their iconic mugs everywhere. I do have some of their leader mugs, though I don't want to grab one right now. But you just imagine this, but bigger. One thing I love about the Oktoberfest style of beer is it's like the only style of beer where drinking it out of a boot is appropriate. If you ever see those big glass boots, sort of the official drinking glass of those. I don't have one of those. That's one of the few pieces of beer glassware I am lacking. So one of these days I will get myself a boot. But all right, but we are on the so like I said, I like the Hofbrau Dunkel a lot, and I hadn't tried this one before. I have already broken into the 6-pack though, so now I have tried this one. So I won't be trying for the first time on screen here. But I gotta say, I really do like it. I like it a lot. We got a set versus an over pair, big hand, takes it down. All right, and we could be paying more attention to what our opponents are doing here. To be honest, it's less important at the early stages because we're just playing super tight here. But we probably should in case we get into, what you want to pay attention in this sort of spot here is you want to see how aggressive are people being, especially post flop, so you can kind of adjust to that and basically if you get put into a weird spot where you've got, say, like top pair but not a great kicker, you can kind of figure out if your opponents are they someone who is betting worse hands than that, or are they someone who almost never bets hands, and so well, my top pair with worse kicker's got to be worse than what they've got because they're only betting good stuff, as it were. There's my nice and heady pour. I think I've talked about it before on here about my opinions about head, which I like head a lot. Can't do anything with this, so we'll just check. And we will fold. Wow, crazy hand. Who would have gotten a pair? I don't think it's the best hand here, though. All right. So let's see if we can get some hands here. So far, I haven't had a very action-packed anything going on here. So the Dunkel is a style I'd recommend you try if if you've had your share of Oktoberfest beers and you want to try something a little bit different, a little bit more flavor. Dunkels have this very heavy malty character to them that I love, and it's just a very roasty malty character. It's not quite the same as a porter. It's more of a sort of caramel character, I think is the best way to describe it, that you get from Dunkels. It's really nice and it's really different, and it's still very very easy to drink. It's not like a IPA or something that you've got to sip at, or something super strong and boozy. It's just kind of like a nice beer with a lot of character that you still want to drink it. We can let this one go as well. And yeah, it's good. So I have a German friend in town, and he was telling me how much he hates this beer, and they can consider it swill and all that over in Germany. But and then I asked him, well, what German beers do we get here that are so good? And I think Hofbrau was about the only one he mentioned, and then whatever. I mean, I think it's a good beer. I enjoy it. Oh, he also likes Erdinger, which I do like. I agree, that's a very good beer. So like this is an example of a guy, we haven't been paying as much attention to him, but he's played almost no hands, and then now he's raising under the gun. It's kind of like a marginal call here. If he's one of these players who's like playing almost every hand, I think we could call this and play it profitably. We're in position, and 10 Queen is a solid hand. But against someone who's often going to have us dominated, or at the very least is going to have a better hand than us to start off with, there's no point in playing that there. I don't think it's profitable. And obviously ace high board. I mean, that's just a perfect board for him to see bet, even if he doesn't have it there. Ace high board, nothing else going on. Might as well bet. We're going to go ahead and raise this guy. And I kind of feel like he's going to call if we go a little bigger, so I could really even make it 160 maybe, but I don't necessarily want to get myself in a weird spot if the flop comes down like ace king 5 or something. Yeah, like this is not a flop we're excited about. I think we're just going to try to see if we can check it down. Again, this is where if I were paying more attention, I could remember a little bit more about how aggressive this guy's been. But I think at this point, we're not going to get much profit from worse hands if we bet. And we're certainly not getting any better hands than ours to fold. So we might as well just see if he'll let us check it down. Okay, I mean that's the one reason that you can bet for protection early on there, but I think the value you lose when you're behind is, uh, the money you lose when you're behind and he calls you is going to add up to much more than the little bit you gain from the times there's a hand that hasn't gotten there but it just happens to get there in the last two cards. And he very well could have just called the flop there anyway. And then if he called the flop there, we almost certainly weren't betting the turn. I mean, if this guy's like playing a little loose and wanted to peel there because he had a gut shot, which he very well may well have been, betting that flop would have just lost us more money there. It was unfortunate that we got rivered like we did, but it happened. I'm gonna go ahead and raise it up here though. Again, obviously we got an okay hand. Rick Moose. What do you think, Rickopotamus? Guy just calls. I think we should bet here. I mean, there's lots of draws out there that we definitely want to start charging. I think most of the time he's just going to fold here. Interesting just to see him call, and he called very quickly. I guess we just shove here. See what he does. He folds. He may have had a 10 there that he called with real quickly, but I think he either had a draw or a 5 or a 6 more often than not. Or, I don't know, something in between. I just don't feel like his hand was super strong there. He didn't even think about it when we shoved there. He just kind of folded. So he just didn't seem very strong there. So I don't think betting smaller on the turn would have really done anything. And I certainly don't think it's a good idea to check there and let him continue to get a free card for the river. His stack was a little bit smaller than ours, and his stack was smaller than the pot size. So I mean, whether or not you make it 300 or 600 shouldn't make a difference to him. Sorry, I'm playing with chips here, and I dropped one. Sorry, but it shouldn't make a difference to him. Whether we bet half pot or full pot there. That being said, there are some players who adjust incorrectly to that and will actually play it differently if you bet half pot versus full pot there. So it's something to keep in mind, and maybe there's some exploitation there that could have gotten a little bit better if I, bet a little bit smaller. But I suspect he was going to fold there to any bets. He folded very quickly, and there really wasn't much on that board for him to connect. And it was kind of a scary turn card for him, too. Here we can just check in position here. I don't know what this guy's doing, but I feel like if he just kind of gives up there, we can bet here and take it down. I think most of the time that takes it down, we didn't have to pay much to do it. We basically we're wagering a big blind to win 2, and I feel like we take that down a lot. This hand's okay. We can play it. We're not feeling great about it, but half a big blind, pot odds, all that good stuff. Well, we got 3 to a straight flush, so there's that. But I don't feel okay. Well, we got 4 to a straight flush. So there's that. I mean, we could try like that move we did before where we bet here and then bet again on the river if it misses. I don't think that's bad, but I kind of feel like it's just going to check around and we've got a better chance of winning. Yeah, but now that we didn't bet, we leave ourselves vulnerable to this, and we just gotta fold. I mean, our heart's so weak here that it's pretty much never gonna be good, even if we make the heart on the river there. And if he's got a heart, he's always gonna try to tax us, and he might even try to tax us if he doesn't. I mean, there's just a lot of things that can go wrong there. I think you could call there with the plans to bet on the river if the hearts miss, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Because our hand strength, should increase when we make it the flush, but usually I think it's going to be bad. So we could do that. I think that's marginally profitable, but at this point, I just want to protect my stack a little bit more, and I'm not trying to make too many crazy plays like that. But you could play around with that. It might be okay there, and it really wouldn't take too many chips, I think, but just a little bit more than I'm comfortable with. We are getting pretty short here. We're down to 25 big blinds now that the blinds have gone up and up and up. So I think our call on the button here was okay. We've got a pretty hand here. But yeah, I mean we're definitely folding now. I mean this was just kind of the opposite of the flop we wanted to see. Got some more nines. We've had these guys already. Um, Against two limpers here. This is a tricky spot because we are going to be wasting risking a big chunk of our stack. But I think most of the time they're just going to fold to this biggish raise here. And if they just flat call, they're almost certainly making a mistake. It sucks if they flat call with something like ace 9 and then the flop comes ace high. Oh my gosh. I mean, this guy is raising a lot. Guys, I'm going to make a risky play here and just fucking go with it. Sorry if this doesn't work out. But I just really feel like how he cannot be that strong. He does not have tens or better. Okay, well, I'm wrong. I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Well, that sucked. Man, it was just a weird way to play for a guy who's been raising pre-flop, like to just limp under the gun with jacks. I mean, it's a tricky kind of play. I mean, I guess when he raises again, he's showing a decent amount of strength, but golly, I don't know. It was a weird play for him. I think, I've heard some players say, in those spots, I mean, it is a move that you see some people do, this whole check, or this whole, like, call, raise, pre-flop sort of thing. I mean, when you get a big player that's a big table that's being kind of aggressive. Well, in any case, I want to keep playing, so I think we're going to play some cash. Sorry to blow off our stack like that. I mean, I knew it was going to be kind of a weird spot. It just, God, he played it so oddly. Anyway, let me see if I can find a cash game for us. All right, let's play some cash. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I think, we were pretty short, so it's like hard to say that it's ever wrong to shove two nines there when we're short. I mean, that's a good hand. The guy just played it really odd, but at the same time, you really got to wonder, like, how often is he bluffing there in that particular spot? I don't know. It's just so weird to see him not raise with the jacks. I mean, it was, I guess, a good tricky move on his part, but it was just like we had a pretty big chunk of our stack in. You heard me kind of groan when I was doing it, and I was just hoping it was kind of fold through. I'm just not totally sure, though. I think the raise is fine there on my part. I'm just not sure what the best thing to do once he does that min raise to us, because it feels really bad to fold there, but it's a huge chunk of our stack to call, and we basically have to decide whether or not we're going to be calling it off on are we going to be, I mean, he's almost certainly going to bet a lot of flops there. I mean, we've got most of our stack in, so it just puts us in a really tight spot. I mean, you could just flat there with the nines and turn it into set mining, but it just felt like we were so far ahead. I don't know. But I guess the safer play is just to flat there. But I mean, at some point, you've got to put a little bit of pressure on. I don't know. I don't know, folks. I mean, I think, we definitely did kind of just run into it, but I'm not sure if there's a way other than just being super nitty and just flatting pre-flop. I don't know that there's a way to really do better than that there. I don't know. It's something I need to experiment around with more. I mean, that might be just the way to play in those types of situations. Early on in the tournament, we are just kind of looking to hit big hands and get rich. But, I mean, we really were down to 25 big blinds. I don't know. I don't know, folks. Don't know what to tell you. You can write in the comments below if you have feelings about that one way or another. Can you hear the clicking of the chips I'm playing with? I'm just thinking now I probably shouldn't do that. I'm playing on my poker table here. I had a huge loss at the cash games this week, the cash game that I host. Not really huge, but the biggest I've had at this game. Which was kind of annoying. And I think it was sometimes in poker you're playing and you just get put in a lot of marginal spots where it's like you really could teeter every way, teeter either way, or it's just like right on the brink of like, okay, this is the worst hand, or this is the best hand I would fold, or this is the worst hand I would call with, and you just happen to be on the wrong side of that line. And I felt like that was what happened to me this Monday. It was just a lot of those types of spots, and every single time I made the wrong decision. I just teetered the wrong way, and people were showing me their hands and stuff too afterwards, and I'd fold. Like, oh god, it's tough. What can I say? It's tough. Well, I think we're gonna continue here. Seems like a good flop for two jacks. Yeah, I'm still wondering about those nine hands. I mean, the question is will my opponent ever do that with ace king, ace queen, ace jack, um, ace 10? Like, are they playing it that way ever? I don't think I mean, they could play it with like eights and sevens that way, I guess, too. But probably not nothing weaker than those. We will go ahead and bet here. Let's do 55 cents. I feel like it's a good. Opponent quickly calls. I think we need to keep betting here. Our hand is kind of disguised as to where it's at. And our opponent may be on a variety of draws. And I think here we just keep betting. I mean, it sucks if our opponent made one of his draws here. But I think it's just way too nitty not to bet here. I think we're going to be ahead of a lot of hands exactly like that. I was just about to say, actually, like a lot of worse aces and stuff that got there. And certainly his hand with the flush there. Ended up being pretty profitable for us. So that's cool. We will fold this here. And our opponent is not reloading, worth noting. So the guy to the right's pretty short. Maybe we can get him to shove on us in this hand. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. We'll see. We're certainly not going to let this guy just limp in here like he owns the place. Well, I think we are getting good flops and good hands. And let's see if we can keep getting catching people on our hooks here. Of course, last hand we got a good turn, not a good flop. Ugh. Oh, man, I need to stop. Need to stop playing with these chips, but it's just so addicting to play with chips, man. This guy tank calls. I don't know why, but I just want to bet $1 here. It's a little low. I think my opponent's hand isn't crazy strong, but is he going to fold for $1 if he's connected with this board? That 3 didn't change much. Yeah, unless he does that. I really doubt the guy's bluffing here. I mean, it sucks because obviously our hand's insane, but I think that just gave. I believe him. I believe him. Like, he had this weird tank before, and then all of a sudden shoves there. Ha 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 ha. I mean, I don't know. Could be a bad spot. I don't know. I'd have to think. That's kind of an interesting hand that I'd have to think through. But I think more often than not, that's one of those hands where you just get yourself into some major trouble with overpairs, where your hand just looks so good, but at the same time. But there's a lot of hands that beat it. I mean, we're not even beating 2-pair hands, 2 pairs, sets, whatever. Sorry, and this software just glitches out so much. This is my stupid poker tracking software. I was trying to get to my hand history viewer, so I do kind of want to look back at that king's hand later. But it's one of those spots. I mean, if I knew more about that player and I knew they were just super aggressive and would like to bluff in spots like that, I might do something. But I think very few players are going to do that sort of instant shove. I mean, some players just bluff like that, where they think like their bluff looks more convincing if they do it really fast, and so they're just like, all right, if any money card comes, I'm just instantly gonna shove it all in. But it was just kind of a weird dynamic through that hand, and I think it's just really hard. I think we were beat there for sure. What had happened pre-flop? Just making sure I had that right. Yeah, I raised. Yeah, he called from the big blind. Kind of a weird call from the big blind there too. Not sure what that means he has, but whatever. Anyway, I think we played that hand fine. I think the fold was fine. This is the worst part about folding is you never know. You never know if you're right. At least when you call, you immediately know if it was a good decision or a bad decision. But when you fold, you don't know. You just don't know. We're getting a lot of pretty hands here. I do like this. I do like this. And, I mean, it's going to look pretty suspicious to our opponents if we're raising this much. And so I'm going to keep putting the pressure on. I'm going to bet big because I think we look more bluffy here just because we seem so bluffy. And so, yeah, I think we're going to run into a lot of situations like this. And we hold. And we've taken all of the guy to our right's money. Sorry about that. Rerun 6. But he comes back. I mean, he did get just a little bit of bad luck against us. So he's buying in for, I think it's a minimum at these tables here. But he's buying in short, which is great. You want the short stack players to your right so you can see in the situations when they shove. You don't kind of give them extra money when you want to bet and they just want to shove over you because they have to act first a lot of the time. And so, yeah. You get a little more information. It's nice. Interesting spot there. Sad for the flush guy. You would think ace high flush usually takes it down, but nope. Not in that case. I like a call here. I like the call. Got a pretty looking hand. It's got potential. If he bets, I think we're going to call. We're going to float here. Meaning I think we're going to plan on bluffing on later streets because it just doesn't look like he has anything most of the time when he bets here. He could have a pocket pair and have nothing, but I think we're gonna do it. We're gonna play around here a bit. But it may be that he just bets 2 streets and we fold here. Okay, so I think we're just gonna fold. Could like raise him here, pretend we have something, but I think it's okay to just fold there. I was just kind of interested to see if he was the type to kind of give up. We still don't really know. I mean, he could have had like ace queen there, or maybe queen jack, king queen, something like that there. Makes the most sense for him. There's not many 4s in his range. It's kind of one of those spots where it just looks really bluffy when he acts like that. You're raising under the gun, so you're saying you probably have a strong hand. But then the flop comes 4 queen 4, and there's not many strong hands that connect with that unless you have a pocket pair or ace queen, one of the queen X hands. And those only make up a small percentage of your range there, and a lot of your hands aren't going to hit it. If you got a hand like ace king, what are you going to do in this spot? You might bet the flop, but you're probably going to check the turn, But, we haven't seen a ton of hand on this guy. We don't know what he's doing. So that was kind of partially why I did that. I just wanted to get a feel for what he would do there, see if he would continue there, because I just felt like we could take it down a lot of times if he chooses not to bet there. We're going to keep attacking this guy, because I like this hand. I want to play this hand, but I do not want to play it for the minimum. We got position on this guy. Can really just attack him. We saw before he's willing to shove with like flush draws and things, so that's pretty good. I think we can make it a small bet here. I think the guy to our right's just gonna like get really upset and fold, you know, because we've kind of owned him so many times. Sucks to see that guy call, but this is a great card for us to bluff. He could stab out here. Some players will try that. We're going to go ahead and just bet again. We're betting here because a lot of the hands our opponent is claiming he had on the flop are not going to... So what is he calling with there? I feel like we can bet one more time here. And I think we're going to take it down a lot. This is kind of a more marginal spot here, but I feel like, okay, if he's got a flush draw, that has, like a king-high flush draw, he's going to fold a lot of times. Okay, two-pair, obviously, like, way at the best. It was kind of a weird hand. I mean, and so, you know, he ended up having kind of a weird hand for that spot, because he had ace-3 there. And so it's like, okay, you know, you call on this flop, 7-6-3. What hands do you really have that connect to it? Pretty much a suited ace or like some weird connectors, 7-8 or something like that. You know, there's a lot of hands that maybe connect with one of these cards. But as soon as the ace comes down, a lot of those single pair hands are bad unless you have exactly a suited connector with that. So, you know, you know, he's not representing a lot of hands the way he played that there. You know, when he calls on the flop and then on the turn, it's like very, very weird. And so one thing he could have is a lot of flush draws are certainly possible that simply miss on that river. All right. Well, you know, I think we've been very aggressive and bluffed a lot on this, so I think people aren't going to believe us so much here. So we should just be betting at every opportunity when we hit our hands, for sure. Like, there's no way we can't lead out here. Okay. Interesting. I mean, we can't really fold here. Don't know what this guy to our left's going to do. And we can't really fold here. This is getting to be not a great spot for us. I was going to say, it's really hard for us to beat Mr. Rerun there. Yeah. Man, so we're just getting into a lot of trouble here. We've played so many hands. Yeah, I mean, I think here's that actual hand. I think we played it fine. I mean, you know, we got Jack King. It's a strong hand. Flop comes. We hit our, you know, a great card, which even if we're behind there, we at least have outs because we have a straight draw as well. I think we're going to see if our 3 is good here. Anyway, so we have outs. No matter what. When the guy raises, he's basically all in. There's a lot of money in the pot. The other guy doesn't seem like he's too committed to being aggressive there. So there's just, you know, so we can kind of expect that what we're paying on the flop is all we're going to pay. And if you just look at, like, the hands that connect in some way... Crap, sorry, I keep skipping back. If you just look at the hands that connect in some way with this flop, like, we've got one of the best ones. There's going to be a hell of a lot of draws that we're ahead of. You know, and the few hands we're behind, we usually have a draw to get to be ahead of, you know. So I feel, and you know, and the pot was pretty big by the time this guy's like raising and all this kind of stuff. This other guy's in it, which whatever. I mean, he could you know, he wasn't being very aggressive, so I don't think he had something. It didn't feel like he had something really big. So yeah, I think all in all that line was fine. I don't mind the bet here. But we're going to give up here because we can't reliably bluff having an ace. If he's got a 9, if he's got a 3, he's going to keep calling us. If he's got an ace, he's going to keep calling us. It just wasn't a good turn card for us. He pots it on the river, which actually looks pretty bluffy, but we're going to fold it. I think pot on the river most likely means he's got an ace, but also can mean, I don't know. All right. We're going to call here. So yeah, with that last hand, I just felt like we could get to the river cheap after that point. And if you look at just where we were at on the flop, we're going to be ahead of so many hands that are playing that aggressively that we might as well stay with it. But by the river, it was pretty obvious. It was very unlikely we're going to win because it was just like, okay, all the draws got there, random ace hands got there. I mean, there just was nothing that we could possibly have at that point that was winning, or that we're beating, that would play those ways. So that kind of sucked. Oh, we're gonna fold here. We might top off in a bit. I don't mind playing 50 big blinds deep, but I don't want to play too much less than that. We've had a lot of good hands. We've had a lot of flops that could look good for us, but few of them have actually ended up paying off. Don't know what I think about that. A little bit of a scare card because he could have had a 10 there, but could be on some draw that we want to tax. And certainly, I mean, if he's ahead of us or if he's got some random queen that he's sticking with, we're good. We've got the flush draw. We're doing all right there. Like, we've got outs even if we're beat, usually. Let's see. Yeah, we can profitably call here. This is kind of interesting. We got a pair and a gut shot, so I think we have to call a c-bet here. I don't know how aggressive this guy's going to be, but, I mean, he's often not connecting with this board. He seems to be c-betting a decent amount, although so again, c-bet just means continuation bet, so the guy who bet before the flop is also the guy who's betting on the flop. Let's see what happens here. This could be painful because if he's got an ace, he's going to bet, but I think he's also going to bluff here some percentage of the time. Yeah, and it's a big bet. It's kind of like I don't believe it, but man. This is one of those spots that's really tricky. I mean, it's a good bet on his part because this card just completes so much. It's a bigger bet though, so it's just like a little surprising that he actually would. It'd be a little shocking that he'd actually have it. So I think some people are gonna just call there. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know about that call on the river there. I mean, it kind of, again, depends a bit about what we know about what that guy's doing. I feel like I kind of swing back and forth in the way I play. A few months at a time, where I'll go from like playing too loose for a while to playing too nitty for a while. This type of flop, I usually just like to go ahead and lead out because we don't want anybody to get ahead of us. We want, I think. Yeah, people will do, whoa, well, this is weird. This is weird. Weird. I guess we're just going to call. This is double weird. I think we're just going to call another bet if there's a pot size bet. So he's got like ace 8. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just feel like we got to fold there. So I was saying, I think I flip back and forth a lot between playing too aggressive and playing too nitty. And I think I've swung back to playing too nitty for a while. So I'm trying to sneak back to being aggressive and making more hero calls and all that good stuff. But you got to be careful because you can just go too much in one way or too much in the other way. I mean, obviously, you really need to be considering, it's not really a spectrum of too nitty versus too aggressive. It's more of a you need to look at every situation on its own merit. But sometimes you kind of just you run the math and you're like it's close and I don't want to risk here because I think this guy it's almost a question of like how much credit do you give your opponents? You know, do you give them a credit for being for bluffing in these types of spots versus not? And sometimes you, I think, can subconsciously just sort of you can subconsciously just ascribe to people either oh they're bluffing way more than they really are or oh they're bluffing way less than they really are, you know. And that's a difficult thing to suss out, and I think it comes a lot from you need to pay more attention to your opponents and what they're doing to actually get an idea like is there anywhere that they bluffed and they showed down, how often are they betting here versus how often do they actually have a hand. I don't know, you know. So those kind of things you got to work on. Probably play for about 10 more minutes here, I think, which would give us a half hour doing the other stuff, a half hour at the half hour in the sit and go, half hour at this, which I think is fine. I mean, I like to play longer sessions at this, but you know, make an hour long video is fine. Hold on a second. I went ahead and topped off there, although you're not going to see it till after this hand, which we're gonna bet here. 6, 7, 8, 10. I mean, how many streets is this guy gonna call? I'm gonna check here. I don't know, man. I think he's got it. Anyway. All right, sorry for that pause there. It was just sort of a I just wanted that hand to go my way at least. Ugh. All right. Well, again, a flop that looks good for us. Let's see if that holds true. Look at that. Hit a few good pots early on, and then now it seems like we keep hitting flops and turns, and then, but just not, but it's just always feeling like we have the worst hand. I know, it doesn't sound good to be mopey. Everybody be upbeat. Come on, it's the summer. Well, it's not the summertime. It's almost over, which means more beer drinking time because everybody needs excuses to drink, and one of the best excuses to drink is it's cold. Sorry, I'm looking at the microphone. I hope it's working because I see. Yeah, it looks like it's working. Anyway, I'm watching the volume levels. I'm like, oh, those look lower than they should be. I've had issues with this mic cutting out before. Anyway, like I said, it's getting cold outside. Not really. I live in Austin. Never gets cold here. It hasn't even started really cooling down yet. But it will eventually start getting cold and turn into autumn or something if Austin really had that sort of thing. And that means more drinking. Because certainly don't do enough of that. And if you're drinking, why not grab a Warsteiner? Should have looked up what the German said. Ein. Ein means, well, no, eins is one, but I think ein also means like a. And I don't, and Bieren is something to do with beer, presumably. So maybe if you can read that, tell me what it says. Or just type it in the Google Translate or whatever. Yeah, here's another hand that looked good, but I didn't think was worth raising. I mean, we could have maybe raised a pre-flop, but it's not going to be insanely profitable for us. We got two pair. Got two pair with an ace kicker. I like it. I like it. I mean, I think if someone bets, we have to call. I think otherwise we let it check down and we probably chop the pot at least one way. Because people don't seem interested in betting here. Yep. Called it. The other guys had like 5, 6, 9, 7, just a bunch of random trash. So maybe we could have raised it up there. Maybe these guys are playing loose enough that we should be raising a bit more widely, as it were. I think like here, for example, is a spot where we can raise it up. Because our hand looks good. This guy's playing a lot of hands. We don't necessarily want to play a pot out of position, so we don't mind just winning it right there. And when we don't, we can do all sorts of crazy things and look really aggressive if we make our flush, etc., etc. Maybe you should play it, well, we're on the button, so we can play a bit loose here, but I was going to say we could maybe play a little tighter, given how things have been going, but we're on the button, play a little loose. Interesting spot. Interesting spot. I think I'm just going to check, but I think it's unlikely we win, because even if we're not ahead... So the first guy is checking very fast. Wow. I don't know. I'm going to bet here. I just don't want him to see a free card, and I feel like with 3 players, it's going to be hard for the 2 other players not to hit the river if they haven't already hit it. It just seemed like they didn't have anything. They were just checking too quickly, not thinking about betting in those spots. So it's just like, what do they really have? Like a really weak queen or something, and they're worried someone has a king? Like, even then, that seems really odd for this spot. All right. I mean, again, a flop that looks great for us, but we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, maybe we spike the club on the turn. The shitty thing is I think this guy's going to bet again on the turn here. So if we don't hit our club, but we do hit our club, and I'm certainly willing to go all in at this point. I'm going to call here. Not the best card for us. I mean, if he's got like a king of clubs that he's sitting with, now he just got there, and our hand doesn't look very disguised, so we're probably not going to get more money from worse hands. Oh, this is so nasty. I mean, we've got the queen. God. This is like such a bad spot for us. We're going to call. All right. Yay for the hero call. I just felt like, on the turn I was sitting there thinking, well, there's a good shot that he's got something. Here, let me pull up the hand so we can talk about it. On the turn I thought like, well, I was thinking about what we could beat, because obviously we were probably ahead there. Obviously we were almost certainly ahead on the turn. I mean, occasionally he's gonna have us beat, and that's just bad luck on the turn. But I was thinking like, well, what could beat us at this point? What do we want to do? And so what could beat us at that point is the king. If he's sitting on the king of clubs and another club comes down, but it's kind of a rare thing. So I felt like, we kind of disguise our hand a lot if we just check call there again. And I think that's what we did, and I think that's what got paid us off at the end there. I mean, I think we had to be a little worried. It was a bit of a hero call because, he was very interested in shoving there. But we're going to fold. We thought too long about it to not fold, I think. Sorry, doing too many things at once. So point being, like, I felt like we could have been beat there in the river, and that's why, that's a hallmark of a good bluff, is your opponent has to wonder, like, could they be beat there? Like, if your opponent doesn't have to wonder and is just calling, then, your bluff has not worked. But if you have like convincing hands that make sense that you can represent, and he certainly could represent like having a king of clubs there with something else, king 10 of clubs or some king 10 with the king of clubs or something like that would make sense as well. So there were a lot of like niche hands like that. And like you would imagine too, if he had like a weak club, that he wouldn't bet like that. I guess that was the other thing. So if his hand is like, let's call here actually, because this guy doesn't raise much. And so when he does, I'm a little worried we're beat. I normally like this hand a lot, but... Alright. We're going to start off with a bet here if he's going to check to us. Alright, that was cool. So yeah, what was I saying? So yeah. So there were a number of hands that he could have had that could beat us there, is the bottom line. and but there wasn't that many, I think, at the end of it. And I think he'd been kind of aggressive before, so we kind of got to look at, what is he doing? Does it really make sense for him to make a min raise on the flop if he's doing it with the intention of sometimes taking it down, sometimes hitting like his clubs? It didn't seem like he had the clubs on the turn either. I mean, if he did, it was just kind of whatever. What did he? And so he just had a 10-7 that he was turning into a bluff. Like, that was a really weird way for him to play that, too. I mean, I guess he just decided, I want to take the betting lead. I'm taking this down. I'm going to go all the way with this. But he kind of turned a medium strength hand into a bluff. And that's usually not what you want to do. Unless you know your hand is beat, you're giving up the value when you bluff, right? Because when you bluff, all the hands that are weaker than yours, are already going to are already going to lose. And so when you bluff, yeah, you fold them out, but what's the point? It doesn't change anything for you. Got a pair of twos. Any good? It's weird. You don't want to bluff with medium strength hand because you're basically giving up any equity that hand has. Because the worst hands you're already beating, so there's no reason to force them out of the pot. And the stronger hands typically aren't going to fold to your bluff if they're really strong. I mean, you only get, it only earns you more money if their hands are within a very narrow range of hands that are stronger than yours, but not that much stronger, then it's not really worth a bluff. And so that guy kind of turned his hand into a bluff on a turn. He could have just checked it back. He could have not raised on the flop, especially seeing how aggressive I've been. He could adjust to that by saying, well, I'm just going to let this guy bet into me. But instead he turned his medium strength hand into a bluff by raising the flop and betting the turn, a line that looks very strong. Obviously, we made the flush, and so he might be trying to rep that exact same thing. And then he shoves on the river, and it's a big shove. I mean, it's a close to pot size shove. It's a lot of money. It's a big part of the stack. So it looks like a big sort of play. I mean, but he's kind of repping the hand we have and all that. And he's definitely at that point thrown away any value his 10 might have, because no hand worse than his is ever calling. Like, it's at that point a pure bluff. Hope that makes sense. I think I can explain that in a jumbled way. But yes, you should know, as a rule, you typically want to bluff with, drawy hands that haven't made it yet but could eventually get there. I feel like we haven't seen this guy raise much. I mean, he's got this percentage here, but it's a pretty big raise too. I don't, and our hand's not very good, so I don't mind folding there. But yeah, point being, you want to bluff with hands that are things like draws that aren't winning yet, but could potentially get there, which is a nice type of hand to bet with, both because you get the betting lead, you get some fold equity, so even if your hand doesn't get there, you still have a way of winning the hand by continuing to bet and to bet and to bet, so you can get them to fold. So that's one type of hand you want to bet with. The other type of hand you want to bet with are hands that are super weak that can't win. At this point, you have a really weak hand that there's no value in it, so you might as well just turn it into a bluff. And that may have been what he concluded when I called the flop there, but I don't think he necessarily should have concluded that. And we're closing in on the hour mark here, so we're going to stop pretty soon here. Seems like an okay flop for us. We're going to go ahead and bet. We do have top pair with a good kicker. Our opponent calls. He tanks a lot. I think we can just check here, give our opponent a chance to bluff. We do have a full house now. That's something. Okay, so I think we can bet here. It looks really confusing for our opponent. And I think he's got a hand like a king because he didn't really want to bet. Or, well, I don't know what he had there. Interesting. Maybe he had jacks or something like that and was just willing to call once and then let it go. Because he didn't seem to give it much thought on the river there. So it seems kind of like a hand like jacks where he's just kind of well, it's a little too nitty to fold this to one bet, but kind of going in knowing he has to fold if there's a lot of aggression. All right. Well, that's about as best you can hope for with a shitty hand like 5-10. Unfortunately, I think our opponent's not doing much here, but I'll make a bet. And he folds. Yep, that's some sads for our trips. I do believe this will be our last go around here. So I hope you've enjoyed this viewing experience. Sorry that sit and go went bad. Still, I still have weird feelings about that one hand. I don't know what I think about it. It might have just been a bad spot. Might have just gotten owned. I don't know. I don't know. Here's an interesting spot. Um, Interesting as in it should potentially be pretty profitable for us, all things considered. So I made it 3x plus then, usually the standard is you make it like 3 times the bet, sort of where you're starting from when you're raising here, and then you want to also add in whatever other people who have called what their contribution was. So essentially this guy called, so it was 4 times the bet instead of 3. Not a fun flop for us. We're just going to check it back. Nice thing about checking it back. This is all very interesting. I think we're just going to keep checking it back here. I just don't think we get any... I'm going to bet 195 here. If our opponent's got like jacks, he's going to go, my hands don't make any sense. I don't know what he had there. I mean, he did just flat pre-flop when we raised, so that means he can't have like a super strong hand. He didn't have like ace king there. And then when he just keeps checking, I usually feel like that means he's got some medium strength hand, which usually means they're going to call one bet there. I don't know if he has a read on me or a reason not to, or I don't know if he just looked at the board and was like, this is too scary, I'm not messing with it. This guy is clearly setting a trap. He might be owning us a little bit by being like, well, this guy's been so aggressive and all of a sudden he's not being aggressive. Like, clearly this was a trap, which is, some good logic, but I don't know that a lot of people think it through to that level. And that's a question of balance and balancing your range. If I was more concerned with balancing my range, I would always, always, always be betting that flop. But I kind of felt like I could make it look like I was scared of that ace to give him a chance to bluff, even if he didn't have to give him a chance to bet, even if he didn't have the ace. So he's bluffing a lot of the time, so then we can get some value there. It was sort of a pot control situation, though, where I didn't want to get a ton of money in the pot. Like, if I bet and he decides to raise, and I really don't know what to do, and I'm probably going to make a decent number of mistakes, although I'm probably beat if he does that. But even worse is, like, I bet... he calls and the turn comes, goes check, check, and then he bets on the river, and it's just kind of like, that's a spot I hate being in, where you're just kind of, you don't know where you're at all in the hand, and you kind of like begrudgingly have to call and whatever. I feel like we give ourselves more avenue to value by checking that flop. And let me pull up the hand just so you can, or maybe not, if it'll come up. Oh, wait, here we go. Hands. So that's a spot I like to check the flop against certain players, because I just kind of feel like, we want to keep the pot kind of smallish, because certainly there's a lot of ace hands in his range. At the same time, we also can get some extra value if our opponent decides to bluff. We're going to sit out. So if our opponent decides to bluff in a pot like that, then we can get some extra value as well. So if you get some, I think at the end of the day, then you add up, like, what are all the hands my opponents could have? What are all the ways he would play it? In the end, how much money did I make in that hand? I think that makes us the most, because it's like we bet the flop. What's the best hand that we're beating that he's going to call with, like maybe he's got queen 10. which isn't a great hand for us anyway because he's got outs and other things, you know. So yeah, if he's got queen 10 exactly, maybe, you know, bet on the flop. But even then, if we bet again anywhere else on the river, like any else in that hand, we're never getting any more value. Versus, like, if we check, we give him a chance to bluff on the turn. We check again, we give him a chance to bluff again on the river. If he's like, this guy has nothing, I'm just going to take him down. And then we also get a bet on the river, which I think looks like the bluffiest spot for the whole hand to bet. You know, it looks like from our perspective, he's like, what, this guy all of a sudden has a hand? You know, screw you. I'm going to, whatever. I mean, to a more thinking player, I think they're going to see it as, okay, sometimes my opponent's value betting here versus bluffing here. You know, but I think a lot of players are just going to look at it and be like, what you have? You know, do you have an 8? Really? You're going to raise pre-flop into 2 players with an 8 and then, you know, get here on the river with your trips? Like, doesn't make any sense. So, and then I think, like, you know, so if he's got a hand, so again, going back to like the queen 10 example, if he's got a hand like queen 10, he calls a bet on the flop, check, check. And then on the river, like, if we bet, he's going to just fold. I don't think he's going to call. So we only got 1 bet of value. Versus if we check the flop and check the turn and then bet the river, he's probably going to call with queen 10 at the same time. And so we're also only going to get 1 street of value. So either way, we get 1 street of value from his better hands that can call us. And then for his really good hands, you know, we're putting less money in the pot. We're getting ourselves into less tricky situations. And for his really bad hands, we're giving them a chance to bluff. So I think that maximizes our value here. I think the other big thing, I mean, there's not a lot of draws on that flop, so we don't really have to be charging for anything. You know, Jack 10 exactly has got a draw, which he would have made on the turn. But which could have made it a dangerous turn card. But when he didn't bet that turn card, I wasn't worried about that. Click. Sorry if those clicks are loud. Playing with chips. I shouldn't be doing it while we're watching videos. Anyway, thanks for watching. Again, you know, shoot me a comment, shoot me a message if you have thoughts about play or questions about why I did this or did that. Email me, quackpoker@gmail.com, if you want me to look at your hand histories. I still have a few that eventually I might do. I don't know. I've got to kind of sift through it, figure it out and all that. But if you have your own, please add to it, because if, you know, especially if someone sends me something super interesting, I'll dive right on that. And you get, free hand coaching, which is pretty valuable. So do it. What else? Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff is nice just to know that people like what I'm doing or dislike. You can thumbs down if you want to. I give you permission. You have my blessing. Though I think if you thumbs down, you probably haven't sat through this much video. Anyway, I need to shut up now. Long outro. Just gonna stretch. It's been good playing with you. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.